And I'm back. And what I'm going to do here today is I'm going to check the transmission fluid in this 2001 Volvo V70. I've taken it for a drive. I've driven it about 20 miles and everything's warmed up to temperature. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the transmission fluid, the automatic transmission fluid. I'm about to do a change on that. And what I want to do is I want to determine the level in the transmission when it's hot. All right, now the dipstick on the automatic transmission on these cars is really low. It's buried. It's right down in here. Now, okay, I got it out. I'm gonna dry it off. Down here, that's the cold mark. And up here is the hot mark. It says don't overfill. Okay. So it wants to be right up in here if it's hot and sitting on the level, okay? Yeah, it's right there. It's at the word do. So it's overfilled. This transmission is overfilled. So what I'm going to do is when we change the fluid, we use the engine, running engine to pump out fluid. We'll pump out like 1.5 liters, and then we'll put 1.5 liters in. Then we'll take out another 1.5 liters and 1.5 liters in. You can't just drain it all out like an oil change. It's because it all circulates through the system. But I'm going to put a little bit less in when I fill it. Okay, good to know. Okay, so I've got the car up on ramps, and because I have an automatic transmission cooler that's down in here, I'm going to remove the bumper cover. Now, you might think that's a daunting task, and the first time I went to do it, I thought so too, but it's not really that bad. There's a screw right here on both sides. There's 2 bolts on the front right here, and you remove these push tabs here, and the whole bumper cover comes off, believe it or not. Okay, so this is a T25. Okay, this one, and one in the same spot on the other side. And that's it there. And you're going to want to take these push pins out of here, like that. And there's these little covers on the front of the bumper cover, like that, and it covers up I think it's a 12mm retaining bolt. Okay, there's one bolt there, and same thing here. And in case you're wondering what this other cover is for, it's for the toe. There's a toe attachment you can screw in here, right in here. It threads into the frame, and you can pull the vehicle with it. That's how you pull these. There's an eye that screws into there, so we don't have to do anything in there actually to remove the bumper cover. Okay, so usually there's a push pin between the corner of the bumper cover and here, and someone has just put a piece of wire there. That's okay. That did the job. Sometimes a modification will work. Okay. Looks like there would have been a push pin there too. And on the other side, would have been a push pin here, and one on that corner too, right there. And these wipers have to come off. Okay, so there's a little cover on it here. We got to pop that off. Okay, that little plastic cover comes out. Okay, And then this looks like an 8mm stud on the end of that shaft that has to come off. There's the nut, comes off. And what I usually like to do is mark the orientation that the blade came off the shaft. So I'm just going to look at the center line on that, and I'm going to draw a little line across there like that, and that just shows me that that lines up with that when it was in the park position. There's a spline there, and then this is the, for the squirter, this hose has to come off. Alright. And I'm going to just put the nut back on the end of that shaft so I don't lose it. Just like that, and the same on the other side. Okay, so I'm just going to pop this up here. Alright. Should come off of there. There it is. Okay, set it down. Now I do have the fog light connections to disconnect. One there and one there. Just like that. And the whole thing comes off in one piece. All right, and that allows access to the transmission cooler. That's right here. Okay, so I've had the engine running for a few minutes to warm up the transmission fluid. I've done a couple of things. I put a wire on the dipstick tube just so while I'm doing this I can retrieve the dipstick easier. Okay. And I got a funnel and I made it up with a hose. The end of the funnel wasn't quite small enough to go inside where you have to fill it up, but this hose is. So I added a piece of hose to this funnel, and I've got approved mobile ATF 3309, which is recommended by Volvo for the transmissions in these vehicles. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to drain out what's in the main body of the transmission. Now you got to remember most of the fluid is up inside the passages and inside the torque converter, so that's why you have to change this fluid in steps. So first thing you do is you change the most of it that's in the sump, and then you replenish that. And what I've got is I've got some graduated beakers, so I'm going to measure exactly how much I take out, and I'm going to replace just that much every time. And we're going to do it in increments. We're going to keep doing that until we get clear fluid coming out. So the drain plug on the transmission is right here. So we're going to take that out. The transmission is warm, and I've got a pan here, a clean pan to catch it in, and I'm going to measure how much comes out. All right, so I don't have the metric wrench, but 15/16 fits perfectly on there. Okay. Yeah, it's certainly due for a change. There's a magnet on the end of this plug, and there was a little bit of black on the magnet, but nothing else. I don't see any greater particles than that on there. Let's give it a little wipe here. It doesn't look too bad. Okay, so for right now I don't have a new gasket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of this stuff on it. True Blue pipe thread sealant. And that is really sticky stuff. And I'm just going to put that on the gasket. Both sides. That's back in there. Okay, so what I've got is I got these graduated containers. They're brand new, and they'll hold up to 2 liters of fluid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour that fluid that I took out of the transmission into here, so we'll know exactly how much we took out and how much to refill. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be more than 2 liters, so that's 2 there. And if you saw at the beginning of the video, you can see where this transmission was a little bit overfilled. And that's probably why I'm getting so much. I only expected about 2.5, maybe 3 liters out of this on this initial dump, and I've gotten almost 4 liters. So that's how much I get out of the sump on the drain. So that's 2 liters exactly there, and that's 2 quarts exactly there. So just under 4 liters and just over 4 quarts. So if you measure here, that's 2 quarts, 2 quarts. It's right on 2 quarts there. So it's just over 2 quarts, and it actually equals 2 liters. So it's best part of, might as well say 4 quarts and a bit, or just under 4 liters. All right, so now with the drain plug in, let's put new fluid in there. I'm not going to put quite that much because I know that this transmission was overfilled a little bit. So, okay, and you can see this stuff here, the Mobile ATF 3309, which is recommended. This is 1 liter exactly, or 1.06 US quarts. So I'm just going to talk about liters, because it's what my containers are graduated in as well. So each of these is a liter. So I'm going to I'll add 3 liters. That hose just goes down inside. Okay, that's 1 liter almost. Okay, that's 3 liters in there. Okay, so I was looking at these transmission hoses going to the cooler. Then I started looking at the cooler itself and the bracket. So I've decided to take it out and take a better look at it. I just got one of these empty jugs, and I'm going to capture the fluid in here and keep track of it. Yeah, so there was 300 milliliters of oil in the cooler, which is about, what would that be? About 8 ounces. So I'll add that to my total. Okay, so I have a replacement automatic transmission cooler made by Hayden. Okay, and comes in the box. And look what it comes with. It comes with bit of hose. Now these things here, sometimes people, what they do is they mount these through the fins and through the fins of your radiator, and that's adequate. People do that, but since this one was already mounted quite solid, I think I'm going to go that way as well. But this comes with the kit anyway, and it comes with about 4 feet of 3/8 hose and some instructions. We'll get rid of those. And no, we should look at our instructions. Should always read your instructions. Okay, so and there's the empty box, a pizza box it came in. All right, so this is almost the same size as that. It's about 1 inch smaller, but this is rated for big SUVs hauling big trailers and fifth wheels and all that sort of stuff. So it's going to be fine for a car not hauling anything other than itself. All right, so you can see how it's got these little flanges on here. Okay, so here's the old automatic transmission cooler, aftermarket cooler that was put in my Volvo V70. This rusty frame and everything, I was just going to replace it with Now, at the time I didn't have this piece of angle. I had a piece of conduit. I flattened the sides and I mounted the cooler on it like that. And I could show you a clip where I have it installed in the car. Okay, so my automatic transmission cooler that I put in there that I was so proud of, I'm gonna have to move it back that way because I just thought I would hang the bumper for a second, the bumper cover here. I just thought I'd hang it up and see. No, it's too close. It's touching right here. It's touching right here. So I got to move that thing back an inch, probably at least an inch. So, and I put the bumper cover on, and I realized that with the spacers it needed to bring this out away from the front of the condenser, it was too far out, and it was the bumper cover was was touching the rail here. Actually, the bumper cover was touching the front of the cooler. So, you know, sometimes the best laid plans, you know, you got to backtrack. So this was good, but not under the bumper cover. So what I did was I went back to a piece of angle. Okay, so these holes here will mount it to the front of the condenser. And I've got this already made. So show you what I've got done here. I had some scrap steel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount those here on each side, and that gives it some rigidity up and down. And put a bolt here and here and here and there, and we'll show you what that looks like in a moment. And I put a couple of pieces of flat bar up like this, and originally I had this cooler down a little farther, and it was interfering with the bumper still, so I raised it a little more, and so now there's no frame behind it, and the airflow will be complete right through here. And it's nice and solid on there. So let's go down and put that on the car and see how it looks. Mounted it on this frame across the front of the condenser. It's not hooked up yet. I'll show you how that's going to go. Now, when I disassembled this, I took note that the line coming out of the bottom of the transmission, which is this line here, is the discharge out to the cooler, and this is the return line. So how I remembered that was on this particular transmission anyway. Bottom went to the top of the cooler, and top went to the bottom here. So bottom to top, top to bottom. Okay, so this is the return line here, goes into the top of the transmission. You can see it right there. Okay, so that'll go to the bottom. So that'll go here to the bottom of the cooler. And so the hot transmission fluid, as it comes out of the transmission, will go to the top of the cooler up in here. All right, so another thing I'm going to incorporate in this system is a filter. There's a power steering. It says power steering, but I looked up this number, and in the descriptions they said power steering and automatic transmission filter. So it's an Edelman 70-700. And here it is here. So it's got a direction of flow. So it would go in on the right and out on the left. And they say to put that in the return line from the cooler. Okay, so let's do that. Let's get that in. Okay, so there's the filter in place. So this is the return. Put a little zap strap there to kind of hold the line down. And what I did was I put a piece of rubber behind the filter. Just a piece of rubber I had on hand. And I zap strapped it in there. So there's no tension on anything. It's just held nice and firm. And there's the connection to the return line to the top of the transmission right there. And I couldn't wait to use my fluorescent green straps, so that's why those are on there. There'll be no doubt as to where the filter is. Okay, so that's the return line. And we got the discharge line from the transmission here. What we're going to do is when we run the engine, we're going to run that fluid out on that change cycle. So we'll be filming that as well. And where this line, I've left it quite long, and where that'll go when we're done that flushing is up here on the top of the cooler. So as I said before, the oil leaves the transmission hot, comes out, goes into the top of the cooler, leaves the bottom of the cooler, goes through the filter. We can see the direction of flow arrow is on the filter. and then into the top of the transmission to complete the cycle. Okay, so number one, I've got this mobile ATF 3309. So it meets the requirements, and done a lot of research on what will be suitable. And this is certainly one of them that's recommended, and other people recommend it as well. The ATF 3309 by Mobile. All right, so initially I bought, what is it, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. I think I had 18 liters to start with. And as you know, the automatic transmission holds about 9 liters. So what it is in this particular instance, you don't just have a sump that you dump it out and refill it. What you have is you have some of the fluid is throughout the system. So you've got a small sump, and what I did was with these 2 jugs here, that was my first dump, and I took out 4 liters. Okay? And actually I had measured the level before I started on a flat surface with the transmission hot, and it seemed like it was just a little high. So what I did was I replaced what was in the sump with 3.5 liters instead of 4. Okay, so that's been in there. Now, for some other reasons, like testing the engine after some other work, I had to run the engine, so that transmission fluid has now circulated through the system. But we're going to carry on. What I can show you here is that's the color of the first drain. Okay, that's the stuff here. So very dark. All right. So we'll show you all this at the end of the video. And I've purposely left the discharge hose from the transmission up to the cooler for now a little long, and that's for getting the fluid out when we run the engine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to disconnect this upper hose, and we'll put it in a jug, and then we'll run the engine until we fill 2 liters out.
One and a half. 1 3/4. Okay.
So 2 out and 2 in. That's the 5th drain. We're just doing 2 liters at a time. It's starting to change color a little bit. And we'll show you all these at the end, side by side, to compare them.
One and a half. 1 3/4. Okay.
Okay, that's the 6th 2 liter change. Oh, it's starting to change now. Okay, so I'm just going to put this hose back up on the end of the transmission cooler. Bring it all the way in. There. And then I got a hose clamp here. Okay, so I've hooked up this hose, the discharge hose from the transmission, to the top of the cooler. And I've secured it with some zip straps. Okay, so the first drain was 4 liters out of the sump, okay? And that's what it looked like, pretty brown. And after that, we changed 2 liters at a time. So 2 liters out, 2 liters in for the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th time. So we've flushed 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 18 liters have gone through the transmission. And it looks pretty good. And there it is. There's all the different flushes. It's quite hard to see in the bottle, but it cleaned up really good. Okay, so I'm going to put the bumper cover back on here. And there's these retainers that go on the side. All right, and what they do is they slide. They sit in there like that. And they're allowed to move in those slots like that. See that? And what happens is the bumper cover goes up in here and it kind of wraps around. And then when you tighten one of these screws in here, it pulls this way and holds it tight. All right. Now we got to bring the hose for the headlight squirter out through that hole. Bring that up in place like that. Okay, good, nice and snug. And we'll get the same thing done over here. Now we got a bolt to put in here and there, and a cover to go over each of those. And then just our push pins down in through here. It started to rain on me again, you notice? Okay, so I'm back in the exact same spot where I tested the level of the transmission before I did the change. Okay, so the car's sitting here nice and level. I've driven it about 20 miles and it's all warmed up to temperature. So let's dip that and see what we've got. All right. So we got, it's sitting right about here. Okay, now we knew we would have to top it up a little bit, so this is where it wants to be when it's hot. It's sitting here. Okay, so I got the car back on level ground and I'm gonna check the transmission fluid. The engine's hot, so let's see how much is in there. Okay, right here on hot. So that level's perfect. Okay, so we got a good fluid level after that change. And I'll keep an eye on it, but it's right at the hot level when the transmission's hot and the fluid is hot. We've driven that about 20 miles. So that's good. Now the challenge is getting the stick back in there. Anyway, that's how to do a transmission flush on a Volvo V70. Thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up, make some comments down below, and we'll see you again here very soon on Everyday Projects.